wants me. There's no way out. Right? That's thinking. Now, if you want to flip it over on the back side, let me give you 4 steps of thinking in terms of the logical progression. I didn't put it in your notes, I probably should have, but I think there are 4 logical steps of progression in the way you think. Often, it begins with disappointment. Right? I'm disappointed my expectation wasn't met. It could be a real expectation. Right? I spent all the money I got in this week's paycheck on lottery tickets. And I expected to win. And I didn't. Well, right, you would say that's an illegitimate, right? You should have never expected that. That's an illegitimate thing that you expected, but they're still disappointed. The disappointment's not illegitimate, even if the reason for it. Does that make sense? So it doesn't really matter if it's a real expectation or not, or a legitimate expectation. And y'all deal with folks like I do. So you know, some people come in and you think, why did you ever think that? How did you think that would ever fix it? But now they're disappointed. If you are just disappointed, but in your heart you're saying, you know what, not my will, but God's will be done, but it is disappointing, that is not a sin. Right? We can be disappointed. The Bible never says don't be disappointed, but it does say that you can't worship. Let me use this as an example. Right? If there's something in my heart that I want, if I don't get it, but my heart toward God is just not my will, but yours be done, I can be disappointed that that thing didn't happen, but that doesn't mean I'm in sin. Right? And I'm thinking through James 4, the first 10 verses. But what happens? Often that disappointment becomes, here's the second stage, discontentment.
Right.
Why? Because my heart, notice how in this illustration I'm gripping. This desire that I want, now I begin to grip it. Right? My heart becomes engaged. And now I'm discontent because what? My plan is better than God's plan. My plan was best. I can be disappointed and say, well, not my will, but yours be done. But Lord, I am praying for this because this is what I truly want. But your will be done. Versus, no, God, you don't understand how important this is. Right? At that point, I call it the white-knuckled response of the heart. Why? Because the more I grip it, the whiter my knuckles become. And then James 4 says what? So you fight and you war. Mm-hmm. Well, once my heart's like this, now it's easy to fight for what I want because I can only see you 2 ways. Either you're for me because you're helping me get it, or you're against me because you're not. Why? Because my heart's gripped. So you move to discontentment. The third one I would suggest, let's call it despair. You say, well, what's the difference between discontentment and despair? In my mind, despair is when you don't see a way out. Right? There's no light at the end of the tunnel. I can be discontent and I can remain there if I still think I can get what I want.
Right.
But when I believe I can't get what I want, that's when I'm going to move toward despair. Because now, all of life is miserable. Right? This is horrible. I'm not getting what I want. Right? Sometimes people will come in and they'll say, well, I'm just despairing. You might ask a few questions, but what are they saying? You know, I just don't see a way out of this. Now, I want to suggest that most people won't stay there long. Either they're going to be just a bit encouraged and they'll bump back to discontentment. Well, that guy did call back. I still may get that job. Or she did text me back, or whatever it is, right? So I don't like it, but I still think it could change. Or they'll go to step 4, and I think step 4 is destruction. That's where they typically reach out for help. You don't hardly talk to people in those first 3 stages. They're going to come to you for help when they fear destruction. Now, right? What are the ends? Self-destruction, suicide. Others' destruction, murder. But there are a million other ways that you can destruct. I can destruct jobs. I can destruct workplaces. I can destruct churches. I can destruct family. I can destruct my marriage. Right? There's a lot of ways you can ruin something and produce destruction. As they contemplate destruction, what is their goal? Their goal is something has to change. Right? That's why they're destructing. They hate the circumstance. They hate where they are. They hate what's going on. They're despairing. There's no way out. And so they think, I've got to make a change. And so if they have to throw a hand grenade in the middle of it, they're going to do it. If people get hurt, that's okay because I can't go on living like this. If I get hurt, again, it's still love of self. It's okay because I can't go through with this. So I would say when we think about their thinking, usually when we're dealing with someone who's in suffering, they're somewhere in that process of discontent, disappointed, discontentment, despairing, or toward destruction. All right, what's question 3 then? Or letter C. What do you want in the midst of what's going on? This is our huckleberry. This is the question behind all the questions. This is the one that most people do not know to ask in terms of the person talking to us. And sometimes it's going to take a little bit of discernment for us to help them even get a good answer. Because this is what Jesus calls your treasure. Right? What is it that you're living for in this moment? That's what you want in the midst of what's going on. Again, last night it would have been interesting if we could have asked questions to that story. Right? What was producing him falling apart? He never said it yesterday, but all of us know it's true because the Bible teaches it. The Bible says, I will never leave you or forsake you. But yet he kept saying, well, Jesus, there was no presence of Jesus there. Right? I had no sense of God was there. But that wasn't true. Right? Simply. And he would say the same thing. All right, I'm not critiquing him at all. He would say the same thing. It wasn't true, but he thought it was true. Because of something he wanted. Now, fascinating enough, right? It'd be a wonderful interview. He told us his prayer had been for years. This is what I want to know your presence. I want to be in this incredible worship of you. Well, with that prayer and that desire, in that circumstance, how did he interpret it? God's not here. Right? Very interesting. As I'm listening, I'm thinking, oh, this is wonderful. Wonderful because it just teaches what we want is our treasure. Another way to say it is our idol. Yeah. Right? The thing that you want, when it's functionally ruling you, it can be a good thing. But when it's functionally ruling you, it's an idol. It's idolatry. And what the Bible says over and over, my little children, flee from idolatry. Don't let something other than the love, first and second great commandment, love God supremely, love other people sincerely. Those are the things that God wants to rule our heart, but yet sometimes it's a job, sometimes it's a spouse, a relationship, kids that would respect me, money in my bank account, right? It could be anything that's ruling me. And if this feels threatened, then that changes the way I see my situation. It changes what I think about, right? This is the important one as we think through all of these. So what do you want? Right? In a perfect world, we would want the folks that we're talking to, whether it's a counselee or in your situation, a client, well, I don't know the term that y'all would use necessarily, the person staying with you. Right? It's in a perfect world, we would want them to say, well, in the midst of this situation, I want to become like Jesus. That's the perfect answer. And they may know the perfect answer, but if they are demonstrating nothing similar to through the Spirit, you realize that you may know the perfect answer, but that's not really what you're living for. Right? It's a friend of mine says, right, every good biblical counselor is a treasure hunter. Because we're trying to figure out, talk to somebody who doesn't know what their treasure is. We're trying to help them figure out what their treasure is. But the heart is deceitfully wicked, and who can know it? But we can't know our own heart, much less somebody else's. So we're asking questions that try to help reveal it. So sometimes it's a question like, well, when you did that, what were you hoping to accomplish? What did, in a perfect world, this is some of the, I call it my magic question. There's all kinds of ways I've heard people talk about it, but usually I have an object on my desk. I actually even have an easy button. Remember from Staples? I've got that easy button that sits on my desk, and so I say to whoever it is I'm talking to, I say, listen, if you could press this easy button and your life would be perfect, describe it for me. What are they telling you? They're telling you what their treasure is. They're telling you this is what would make everything perfect. That's their treasure. That's what they're living for. So then they have a situation. They're thinking about that situation, but they're not thinking outside of what it is they want. Right? Their treasure impacts all of it. Right? Let's do this real quick, just to illustrate it. So if we have a tree here, right? So we're got roots, and in the roots we've said that's our heart. Right? So let's just say when someone speaks, that's fruit. So the words they say are not simply going to represent their thinking, but these words are what? They're going to represent whatever it is that they want down here at their heart. So you can say the exact same thing, but that thing that you say could have 4 or 5 different meanings. What determines its meaning? It's whatever the heart is trying to produce. So I could say I love you to my wife, but that could be a manipulation. Right? We've all had people in our ministries that would say I love you, and their I love you really means I want control, and if I tell you I love you, then you're probably going to let me control what it is I want to control right now. They're not going to tell you I want control, but what? Love of control produces the words I love you. Now it couldn't be from a pure heart, and I love you means I love you. That's wonderful. But it also, the exact same word I love you could come from a heart that wants something that they believe if they tell you they love you that it can manipulate you enough to get what they want. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
They may not even know that themselves.
correct.
They may not be self-aware enough. They might, well,
Correct.
they really might not be. Yeah.
Right. The point is many of our folks we're talking to are not self-aware what they treasure. So they don't know. We're just trying to ask questions to help them, that helps reveal it, right? To help them think through it. So what is going on? What do you think about what is going on? What do you want in the midst of what is going on? And then how do you respond? So let's just do this real quick and kind of put all 4 of these questions. So we have a sun, right? This is our heat. That's question 1. What is going on? That is being interpreted in the inner man with thoughts. So you're thinking. Those thoughts are producing things up here. I mentioned to you a couple other things. Your thinking produces more thinking. Your thinking produces certain elements in your inner man and your outer man. But it's not just thoughts, it's also motives. So that's question 2 and question 3. Question 3 will have the most impact on all of it, and response is question 4. But if you'll notice, this is a big circle. Because when you respond, what does it do? It, in fact, impacts the heat. If you respond in a way that's ungodly, then your heat just gets what? It gets hotter.
Yeah.
If you respond in a way that honors the Lord, your heat may not get hotter. It may not change the circumstance, but it will keep it from getting worse, right? At least as much as you can do. So then you have this constant. I have pressure, puts it on the heart. I think about it. I have motives in the midst of it. That produces fruit. The fruit then impacts the situation. And so David Powlison would call it a vicious circle of folly. Right? I keep thinking and my motive doesn't change. I keep thinking related to my motive, which produces responses. And my whole goal is that this will change, but it just gets worse because I keep doing the same things over and over and over. That's when we need a radical interpretation, right? That's when we've got to introduce Christ and the Bible here so that the fruit changes, which will impact the heat, and they will start becoming more like Christ. So then, instead of a vicious circle of folly, now you have gracious wisdom from the Lord as you move through that. So those are the 4 triage questions. You're going to ask those 4 things. Now let's talk about what your goals are. We've got about 10 minutes here, maybe just 9 minutes, but let me just work you through these 4 goals. Here's the first goal. You want to have recognized presence. Right? Your goal is to incarnate Christ. When we talk about the incarnation, what is that? That means Christ came so that we could see him, touch him, feel him, right? That's what 1 John says. This is who Christ is. You saw him. You touched him with your hands. You handled the word of life. So when we are talking with someone, we want to have this sense of, I want to incarnate Christ. I want you to experience Christ in this moment. At the same time, you want the counselee to feel heard. So you want that person to feel heard, which means you know them. I'm going to just write 4 key words here. Whenever we want to give somebody the presence of Christ, we would call that love. Whenever we want someone to know that we have heard them, we're going to call that know, right? Because we're learning, we're hearing. When we walk away from somebody, we want them to be able to say, you know what, I think he has heard me. I think she has heard me. Letter C is simple truth. What does this person need to know? Let's call that speak. Right? So what do I need to say that this person needs to know? I call that simple truth. And then letter D, simple steps. What does this person need to do? So love, know, speak, do. Those are my 4 goals. I want them to feel heard. I want them to feel heard. That's know. Love, I want to incarnate the love of Christ. I want them to feel heard. I'm going to say what's important. Speak the truth in love. I need to speak something. And then I might suggest that they need to do something as well. Now, those aren't steps, but they are part of the process of talking. Now, if we think about any time that we're talking with someone, we'll just make it a diagram here. Anytime we're talking with someone, the entire time we talk to them, they should have this sense of, I am incarnating Christ, right? Love should be the broad context of what we're doing. And anytime we're talking to them, they should have a sense that they are listening carefully. They are trying to learn and know. But I should never speak Right, that speak, right, there's a significant drop. I should only speak when necessary. Instead, I need to be what? Loving and knowing. So listening, thinking, contemplating. And then when I say, and these are the things you ought to do, that even ought to be a much slimmer piece. And the question I like to ask, it's there in your notes, when we think of do, is what? The next step. I don't need to fix every problem, but I do need them to take the next step toward godliness, whatever that next step is. Right, so just whatever that next step is, let's go do that. But I would say these are our 4 goals. Incarnate the love of Christ. Make sure that you're listening so that you can know them. Speak simple truth. And then what can I ask them to do that's going to help them with the next step toward righteousness? On the speak, I think often of this question. What passage, right? So I think always of the Bible. What passage, if heard and obeyed, is going to be helpful? Because you don't want to give every passage. You just want to usually minister one thing, right? Simple. So what passage, if heard and obeyed, will help this particular person? So those are what I'm thinking of when I'm talking about goals. So spiritual triage. My primary goal, to be faithful presence in this person's life right now. I need to know something. I need to do some data gathering. When we talk data gathering, we're thinking these 4 questions. What is going on? What are you thinking about what is going on? What are you wanting in the midst of what is going on? And what is your response to what is going on? So triage, and then my goal is to demonstrate the love of Christ, to listen so that the person believes they've been heard. Then I'm going to speak some kind of simple truth that, if heard and obeyed, will help them do what? Take the next step toward faithfulness. Something honors Christ, and that's going to be due. So hopefully that'll help you. Let me pray for you, and then I'll be happy to answer some questions for you. I know you've got to get to your next class. So, Lord, we love you. Thank you that we have the opportunity to serve people. Thank you for trusting us with that. That's a significant deal. We are grateful for this time we could spend together. Please bless the ministry of these dear people as they sacrificially serve those, many of whom are the least of these, many of whom have struggles that they've not worked through a triage on ever.